My name is Allison Reeves, and I never thought I'd find myself plotting revenge against my own sister. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, doesn't it? Allison, you still go to the movies alone. A mocking voice jolts me at the ticket counter. I freeze, my hand hovering over my wallet. That voice. I'd recognize it anywhere, even after all this time. I turn slowly, plastering on a smile that feels more like a grimace.
Derek.
What a surprise. He stands there, all 6 feet of arrogance wrapped in an expensive suit, his arm draped possessively around a petite blonde. My sister, Layla. We thought you'd given up on, well, everything. Derek continues, his lips curling into that infuriating smirk I once found charming. Good to see you're still trying. Layla giggles, a high-pitched sound that grates on my nerves. Oh, come on, Derek. Be nice. She turns to me, her blue eyes wide with faux innocence. How are you, sis? It's been ages. I clench my fists, willing myself not to react. I'm fine, Layla. Just fine. Derek's eyes narrow, clearly disappointed by my lack of response. Well, isn't this cozy? A little family reunion at the cinema. Maybe we should all watch the movie together, for old time's sake. I'd rather gouge my eyes out with a rusty spoon. I mutter under my breath. What was that, darling? Derek leans in, his breath hot on my ear. Speak up. You know how I hate it when you mumble. I step back, my heart racing. I said, no thank you. I'm meeting someone. Layla's eyebrows shoot up. Oh, a date. Something like that. I lie, desperate to escape this nightmare. Derek laughs, the sound echoing through the lobby. Well, Allison Reeves, back in the dating game. This I've got to see. Who's the lucky guy? As if on cue, a warm hand settles on my lower back. Sorry I'm late, babe. Traffic was a nightmare. I turn, shocked, to find myself staring into the kindest pair of brown eyes I've ever seen. The stranger winks at me, then extends his hand to Derek. I'm Matthew. And you are? Derek's smug expression falters for a moment before he recovers.
Derek.
Allison's ex-fiancé. And this is Layla, her sister. My fiancé. Matthew's eyebrows rise slightly, but his smile never wavers. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you both. But if you'll excuse us, we have a movie to catch. As Matthew guides me away, I can't help but wonder, who is this knight in shining armor? And why do I have a feeling my life is about to get a lot more complicated? The movie theater encounter left me shaken. As I lay in bed that night, memories I'd tried so hard to bury came flooding back. 6 months ago, I'd walked into our shared apartment, exhausted from a long day at work. The sound of giggling stopped me cold. I recognized that laugh, Layla's. But what was she doing here? I crept towards the bedroom, my heart pounding. The door was ajar, and through the crack I saw them. Derek and Layla, tangled in our sheets, lost in each other.
Derek.
My voice cracked. They sprang apart, guilty expressions etched on their faces. Derek recovered first, his eyes narrowing. Allison, darling. You're home early. Layla pulled the sheet up, not meeting my gaze. Sis, I can explain dash. Explain? I choked out. Explain how you're in bed with my fiancé? Derek stood, not bothering to cover himself. Oh, come on, Allison. Don't be so dramatic. It's not like you haven't seen this coming. What? I stumbled back, stunned. He advanced, his voice dripping with disdain. You really thought I'd be satisfied with you? Boring, predictable Allison? Your sister here. She knows how to keep a man interested. Layla finally looked up, a mix of shame and defiance in her eyes. I'm sorry, Allison, but we're in love. The next few weeks were a blur of venomous arguments and escalating abuse. Derek's words cut deeper than any physical blow could have. You're pathetic, Allison. No wonder I had to look elsewhere. Did you really think you were good enough for me? Face it, your own sister is better than you in every way. I finally snapped, hurling my engagement ring at him. We're done, Derek.
Get out.
He laughed, that cruel sound I'd come to dread. Gladly. I've got an upgrade waiting. A month later, the engagement announcement appeared in the local paper. Derek and Layla, beaming at the camera, my sister's finger adorned with my discarded ring. I spiraled, barely leaving my apartment, ignoring calls from concerned friends and family. How could I face anyone, knowing I'd been so thoroughly humiliated? But as I lay there, replaying that hellish encounter at the theater, something shifted. The pain was still there, raw and throbbing. But alongside it, a new emotion began to take root.
Rage.
White-hot and all-consuming. They thought they'd broken me, that I'd slink away, forever the pathetic ex-fiancé, the discarded sister. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I woke to insistent knocking. Groggily, I opened the door to find my brother, Nathan, grinning like a madman. "Rise and shine, sis. I've got a plan." I groaned. "Nathan, it's too early for your schemes." He brushed past me, heading straight for the coffee maker. "Trust me, you'll want to hear this one." As the aroma of fresh coffee filled the air, Nathan laid out his outrageous idea. "You need to start dating again.
Publicly.
And I've got the perfect guy." I snorted.
Yeah, right.
"Because I'm such a catch right now." "Hear me out," Nathan insisted. "My friend Matthew. He's smart, successful, and most importantly, he's got a bone to pick with Layla too." That caught my attention. "What do you mean?" Nathan's eyes gleamed. "Let's just say our dear sister has a history of manipulating men. Matthew was one of her victims a few years back. He's been looking for a way to even the score." I leaned forward, intrigued despite myself. "So, what exactly are you proposing?" "A fake relationship. You and Matthew, the new power couple. It'll drive Derek and Layla insane." The idea was tempting, but doubt crept in. "I don't know, Nathan. Isn't that stooping to their level? After what they did to you, they deserve worse." Before I could respond, there was another knock. Nathan jumped up, grinning. Perfect timing. He swung the door open, revealing a tall, handsome man with kind brown eyes. The same man from the theater. "Allison, meet Matthew." "Matthew, my sister Allison." Matthew stepped forward, offering his hand. "Nice to officially meet you, Allison. Sorry about the theater ambush." Nathan filled me in afterward. I shook his hand, feeling a spark of
something.
"No need to apologize. You saved me from a very awkward situation." As we settled in the living room, Matthew's calm demeanor put me at ease. He listened intently as Nathan outlined the plan, occasionally glancing at me with a mix of sympathy and determination. "I'm in if you are," Matthew said finally. "But only if you're comfortable with this, Allison. No pressure." I took a deep breath, weighing my options. The thought of Derek and Layla's smug faces flashed through my mind, igniting that spark of rage again. "Let's do it," I heard myself say. "Let's make them pay." Matthew's smile was both charming and slightly dangerous. "I was hoping you'd say that. Layla has a lot to answer for, and I think it's time we taught her and Derek a lesson they won't forget." As we began to hash out the details of our scheme, I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was either going to be the best decision I'd ever made, or the worst mistake of my life. Over the next few weeks, Matthew and I carefully orchestrated our faux relationship. We started small, with chance encounters at local hotspots frequented by Derek and Layla's crowd. "Ready for this?" Matthew asked, squeezing my hand as we approached the trendy cafe. I took a deep breath. "As I'll ever be." We walked in, laughing at some imaginary joke. I felt eyes on us immediately. Whispers rippled through the room. "Is that Allison? With Matthew Caldwell? Didn't she just break up with Derek?" We played our parts perfectly, lost in conversation, oblivious to the stares. As we left, I caught sight of a familiar face. Layla's best friend, Jessica, furiously typing on her phone. "Mission accomplished," Matthew murmured. Sure enough, my phone buzzed that evening with a text from Layla. "Since when are you dating Matthew Caldwell?" I smirked, leaving her on read. As our relationship progressed, Matthew and I spent more time together, refining our backstory. During one such planning session, I noticed a shadow cross his face. "What is it?" I asked. He hesitated. There's something you should know about Layla and me. Matthew's revelation left me reeling. He'd dated Layla briefly, years ago. She'd manipulated him, using inside information to sabotage a major business deal. She cost me millions, Matthew said, his voice tight, and nearly ruined my reputation. I felt sick. God, Matthew, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she was capable of that. He shrugged, but I could see the pain in his eyes. It's in the past. But it's why I agreed to this plan. Layla needs to face consequences for once in her life. As we delved deeper into our scheme, I found myself genuinely enjoying Matthew's company. His dry wit made me laugh, and his quiet strength was comforting. One evening, as we strolled through the park, our hands intertwined for the benefit of onlookers, I realized how natural it felt. You know, Matthew said softly, sometimes I forget this isn't real. I looked up at him, my heart skipping a beat. Me too. The moment was shattered by a familiar, grating laugh. We turned to see Derek and Layla approaching, arm in arm. Well, Derek drawled. Isn't this cozy? Layla's eyes narrowed as she took in our linked hands. Matthew.
What?
Surprise. Matthew's arm tightened around my waist.
Derek, Layla.
Lovely evening, isn't it? The tension crackled between us. I steeled myself, ready for whatever came next. This was it, the true test of our deception. And I was determined to make them believe every second of it. The annual charity gala was in full swing, the city's elite mingling in their finest attire. Matthew and I stood just outside the grand ballroom, his hand resting lightly on my lower back. Ready, he whispered. I took a deep breath, smoothing my emerald gown. Let's do this. We made our entrance, fashionably late. Heads turned, whispers erupted. I caught sight of Derek and Layla across the room, their smug smiles faltering as they noticed us. Matthew led me to the bar, his charm on full display as he ordered our drinks. I felt Derek's eyes boring into my back. Well, came his voice, dripping with false warmth. If it isn't the happy couple. We turned, Matthew's arm sliding protectively around my waist. Derek, Layla, I said coolly. Lovely to see you both. Layla's eyes narrowed, taking in my dress, my hair, the way Matthew held me. I must say, Allison, I'm surprised to see you here. These events aren't usually your scene. I smiled, saccharine sweet. Oh, but there now. Matthew's been introducing me to all sorts of new experiences. Derek's jaw tightened. How nice. And Matthew, I hear your company's stock is on the rise. Congratulations. Matthew nodded, his expression unreadable.
Thank you, Derek.
It's been a good year. Though I wonder, Derek continued, a glint in his eye, how much of that success is due to your personal connections? The implication hung in the air. I felt Matthew tense beside me. Actually, I interjected, my voice sharp. Matthew's success is entirely his own. Unlike some people, he doesn't need to rely on manipulation and underhanded tactics to get ahead. Derek's smile turned brittle. Careful, Allison. You wouldn't want to say something you might regret. Oh, I think there's been quite enough regret between us already, don't you? I shot back. The tension crackled. Layla tugged at Derek's arm. Darling, let's dance. As they moved away, I caught Layla glancing back, something unreadable in her expression. Matthew squeezed my hand. You are brilliant. I let out a shaky breath. God, that felt good. We spent the rest of the evening working the room, charming guests and subtly dropping hints about Derek's questionable business practices. By the end of the night, I could see the strain on both Derek and Layla's faces as they tried to maintain their facade. As Matthew helped me into our waiting car, I felt a mix of exhilaration and unease. We'd struck the first blow, but I knew Derek wouldn't go down without a fight. What now? I asked as we pulled away from the gala. Matthew's eyes gleamed in the darkness. Now, we turn up the heat. The weeks following the gala were a whirlwind. Matthew and I continued our charade, but something had shifted. Our touches lingered. Our laughter felt more genuine. I found myself looking forward to our fake dates, my heart racing every time he smiled at me. Meanwhile, Derek and Layla's perfect facade began to crumble. It started small, whispers at social gatherings, curious glances from business associates. Then came the bombshell. "Allison, you need to see this," Matthew said, handing me his tablet one morning. The headline screamed, "Tech mogul Derek Chambers under investigation for fraud." I scanned the article, my eyes widening. "How did you?" Matthew's eyes glinted. "Let's just say I had some friends look into Derek's business practices. Turns out, he's been cooking the books for years." The fallout was spectacular. Derek's company's stock plummeted. Investors fled in droves. I watched from afar as he grew increasingly erratic, lashing out at reporters and colleagues alike. Layla wasn't faring much better. One evening, while Matthew and I were having dinner at an upscale restaurant, we witnessed her very public meltdown. She stormed in, mascara streaking her cheeks, and headed straight for the bar. "Another," she slurred, slamming her empty glass down. The bartender hesitated. "Ma'am, I think you've had enough." Layla's shriek echoed through the restaurant. "Don't you know who I am? I'm Layla Chambers. I deserve respect." As security escorted her out, her eyes locked with mine. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the sister I once knew, scared, vulnerable. Then it was gone, replaced by cold fury. That night, as Matthew drove me home, I felt a twinge of guilt. "Are we going too far?" He took my hand, his touch sending sparks through me. "Allison, remember what they did to you."
To us.
"They're facing the consequences of their own actions." I nodded, but the unease lingered. It grew stronger when I arrived home to find a manila envelope slipped under my door. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Matthew and me at various locations over the past months. And one of Matthew, years younger, with his arm around Layla. My hands shook as I read the accompanying note. "Two can play at this game, sis. How well do you really know your new boyfriend?" Doubt crept in, poisonous and insidious. Was Matthew truly on my side, or was I being played again? As I stared at the photos, my phone buzzed with a text from Matthew. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Sweet dreams, beautiful." I closed my eyes, torn between my growing feelings for Matthew and the fear that I was walking into another trap. One thing was clear, this game was far from over. The annual charity gala, once Derek and Layla's crowning social event, was now our stage for the final act. Matthew and I arrived, arm in arm, a united front against the storm we were about to unleash. "Are you ready?" Matthew whispered, his breath warm against my ear. I nodded, steeling myself. "Let's finish this." We made our way through the crowd, exchanging pleasantries and knowing glances with key players we'd carefully cultivated over the past months. The air crackled with anticipation. Suddenly, a hush fell over the room. Derek and Layla had arrived, their smiles strained, eyes darting nervously. They looked like cornered animals, sensing the trap, but unable to escape. As the evening progressed, we set our plan in motion. Matthew took the stage, ostensibly to announce a generous donation. Instead, he cleared his throat and said, "Before we continue, there's something everyone needs to know." With a nod to the technician, a series of damning emails and financial records flashed across the giant screen behind him. Gasps echoed through the ballroom as Derek's fraudulent practices were laid bare for all to see. "Derek Chambers has been embezzling funds from his own charity for years," Matthew announced, his voice steady and clear. Derek lunged forward, face contorted with rage. "You lying bastard. I'll sue you for every penny dash." "Save it, Derek." I cut in, stepping onto the stage. "We have proof. It's over." Layla, wild-eyed and desperate, grabbed the microphone. "You can't believe them. Allison's just jealous because Derek chose me. She's always been pathetic, always dash." Her words devolved into incoherent shrieks as security guards gently but firmly escorted her off stage. The crowd watched in stunned silence as my once perfect sister crumbled before their eyes. Derek, seeing his world implode, made a desperate lunge for Matthew. You ruined everything, he snarled. In that moment, years of pent-up anger and pain surged through me. I stepped between them, my voice low and dangerous. No, Derek. You did this to yourself. You and Layla destroyed lives without a second thought. Now you're reaping what you've sown. As the police arrived to take Derek into custody, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was done. We'd won. But as I turned to Matthew, ready to celebrate our victory, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Regret? Guilt? Before I could question it, he pulled me close and whispered, "There's something I need to tell you, Allison. Something about Layla and me." My blood ran cold. Had I been played again? As the chaos swirled around us, I realized that this night was far from over. The real truth was yet to be revealed. Matthew's revelation left me reeling. He and Layla had indeed been involved, but not in the way I'd feared. They'd worked together to expose Derek's corruption long before I entered the picture. Layla, racked with guilt over betraying me, had played the villain to ensure Derek's downfall. "She loved you, Allison," Matthew said softly. "She couldn't bear what she'd done to you." I sat in stunned silence, processing this new reality. The anger that had fueled me for so long began to ebb, replaced by a bittersweet understanding. In the weeks that followed, the dust began to settle. Derek faced multiple charges, his empire crumbling around him. Layla, free from his influence, checked herself into rehab, determined to make amends. As for Matthew and me, we faced our own reckoning. The pretense of our relationship had long since faded, replaced by something real and profound. But trust, once shattered, isn't easily rebuilt. "I understand if this changes everything," Matthew said one evening, his eyes filled with apprehension. I took his hand, feeling the warmth of his touch. "It changes things, yes, but not everything." We decided to start over, this time with complete honesty. No more games, no more secrets. Months passed. Derek's trial made headlines, his fall from grace complete. Layla emerged from rehab, humbled and seeking reconciliation. Our first meeting was awkward, tears flowing freely as years of hurt and misunderstanding came to the surface. "I'm so sorry, Allison," Layla whispered, "for everything." It wasn't instant forgiveness, but it was a start. As winter turned to spring, I found myself standing on a beach at sunset, Matthew by my side. No audience, no pretense. Just us. "Allison," he began, dropping to one knee, "these past months have taught me what real love is. It's not about revenge or winning. It's about forgiveness, growth, and choosing each other every day. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred my vision as I nodded, pulling him to his feet and into a kiss. Later, as we celebrated with Nathan and my mother, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. The pain, the betrayal, the thirst for revenge, it had all led to this moment of joy and healing. Derek and Layla's actions had nearly destroyed me, but in rising above the hurt, in choosing love over hate, I'd found a strength I never knew I possessed. As I looked around at the faces of those I loved, Matthew, Nathan, my mother, and yes, even Layla, I realized that true victory wasn't in bringing others down. It was in lifting ourselves up, in finding the courage to trust and love again. The dust had settled, revealing not ruins, but a foundation for a beautiful new beginning.